The research station drifted quietly in orbit around a pale blue star. From the outside, it looked calm and orderly, like everything built by the Galactic Union. Smooth metal curves, soft lights, and constant balance. Inside, thousands of minds from different worlds worked together in careful routine. Everything followed patterns. Everything had rules. Everything except humans. Alir Wren walked through the central corridor with his hands in his pockets, moving at a relaxed pace that confused almost everyone who saw him. Other species walked with purpose, their steps timed, their paths calculated. Alir walked because he felt like walking. Sometimes he stopped to look out the viewing windows, even though he had seen space more times than he could count. Today, he stopped again. The star outside was quiet, its light gentle and steady. Alir liked that. It reminded him of evenings back on Earth, when the sun was low and the world felt calm for just a moment. He stayed there longer than necessary. That was when Valles noticed him. Valles observed humans often, but never openly. Her species valued observation without interference. She stood several meters away, pretending to review data floating in the air before her, while her attention focused on Alir. He was doing nothing. That was the strange part. Most beings on the station were always doing something, gathering information, adjusting systems, improving efficiency. Alir stood still, looking at the star, his expression unreadable. Valles felt it then, a soft internal shift. A quiet pressure deep within her body, like something stretching after a long sleep. She froze. Her species did not experience random internal changes. Every biological process followed a strict cycle, measured and recorded over thousands of generations. What she felt now was not scheduled. It was not expected. It was not possible. She dismissed it as an error. Later, during a joint research session, Alir sat across from her at the circular table. The surface displayed shared data, symbols floating gently between them. Valles focused on the information, but the feeling returned. Stronger this time. Her perception sharpened. She noticed details she usually ignored. The slight variation in Alir's breathing, the uneven rhythm of his fingers tapping the table, the subtle emotional tone behind his voice when he spoke. "You okay?" Alir asked. Valles looked up too quickly. "Yes," she replied after a pause that was slightly too long. "I am functioning within acceptable parameters." Alir smiled, small and polite. "Good to hear." He returned his attention to the data, already distracted by a new thought. Valles watched him again, unsettled. Her internal systems were active in ways they had not been since her earliest developmental stage, a stage her species believed was obsolete. When Alir left the room, the sensation faded. Valles remained seated, perfectly still. Her mind raced through possibilities. Environmental influence, hidden radiation, psychological projection, none matched the data. The change had been precise, timed, connected to him. Over the next several cycles, she tested her theory without informing anyone. Whenever Alir entered her vicinity, the sensation returned. Whenever he left, it quieted. It was not immediate, but it was consistent. Her people called it the dormant cycle, a biological phase linked to adaptability, emotional expansion, and cognitive divergence. Long ago, her species had removed it through controlled evolution. Stability replaced growth. Predictability replaced choice. Their society flourished, efficient and peaceful, but unchanged for millennia. The cycle was considered a failure of early design. Yet here it was, awakening. Valles did not report this. Reporting would trigger isolation, analysis, and likely removal from the station. She needed to understand first, so she stayed close to Alir, subtly adjusting her schedule to overlap with his. Alir noticed none of this. He spent his days translating alien languages, often adding unnecessary comments that no one asked for. He asked questions others considered irrelevant. He laughed at things that were not humorous by standard definitions. He made mistakes, corrected them, then sometimes chose the original answer anyway. To Vayli's it was chaos, and yet her mind responded. New connections formed. Ideas emerged that were not strictly logical but somehow useful. One evening the station entered its low-activity phase. Lights dimmed. Sounds softened. Alir sat alone in the observation chamber, recording personal notes, something most species found pointless. Vayli stood at the doorway for a long time before entering. "You are not required to be here," Alir said without looking up. "I am aware," she replied. "I chose to come." That made him glance up. Humans reacted strongly to choice. Vayli's had learned that. They stood in silence for a moment. The cycle stirred inside her again, steady and warm. "May I ask you a question?" she said. "Sure," Alir answered easily. "Do humans often affect others without intention?" He considered that. "Yeah, probably. We do that to ourselves too." Vayli stepped closer. The sensation intensified, but it did not overwhelm her. It felt right. "There is a process within my biology," she said carefully. "It has remained inactive for generations. It is activating now." Alir frowned, concern replacing his casual expression. "Is that dangerous?" "No," she said. "It is transformative." She hesitated, something unfamiliar tightening her chest, emotional weight, anticipation. "It activates only when you are near," she whispered. Alir stared at her, silent. Outside, the blue star continued to shine, unaware that something ancient had begun to wake, not through force, not through technology, but through the simple presence of a human who never realized that being imperfect, curious, and emotionally alive could change the universe. And Vayli's, for the first time in her long, carefully controlled life, did not know what would happen next, but she wanted to find out. Vayli's did not leave the observation chamber after speaking those words. She stood still, her hands folded in front of her, waiting for something she could not define. Her internal cycle remained active, steady like a quiet rhythm she could feel in every thought. It did not feel dangerous. It felt alive. Alir did not speak for a long time. Humans were known for quick reactions, but this moment slowed him. He searched her expression, not with scanners or data tools, but with something more personal. Curiosity mixed with concern. "You're saying this only happens when I'm around?" he finally asked. "Yes," Vayli's replied. "I have confirmed it across multiple cycles. Your presence correlates directly with the activation." "That's new," Alir said honestly. "I don't think I've ever triggered someone's biology before." Vayli's tilted her head slightly. "Your response suggests humor, yet your tone suggests worry." "Both can exist," he said. "Humans do that." She absorbed that. Multiple emotional states at once. Another human contradiction that somehow worked. They sat together after that, not talking much. Vayli simply remained near him, and Alir allowed it, even though he did not fully understand why. He noticed changes too, though he could not name them. Vayli seemed more expressive. Her pauses felt thoughtful instead of programmed. Her questions wandered beyond task limits. Over the next several days, Vayli's condition became impossible to ignore internally, even if it remained invisible to the station. Her thoughts expanded outward. She began imagining outcomes that were not part of assigned simulations. She questioned procedures she once followed without thought. Most unsettling of all, she began to feel preference. She preferred certain conversations, certain moments. She preferred being near Alir. This frightened her. Her species believed preference led to imbalance. Balance was everything. Without it, civilizations collapsed. That belief was written deep into her genetic memory. And yet, the cycle did not feel like collapse. It felt like opening a door that had always been locked. She requested additional collaboration time with Alir, framing it as linguistic cross-analysis. The request was approved instantly. Humans were rarely denied access. Their unpredictability made them useful for unexpected problems. During one session, Alir shared an old Earth story while translating metaphors. The story had no clear lesson, no efficient ending. Valey's listened carefully. "The narrative lacks resolution," she said. "Yeah," Alir replied. "Life does that sometimes." "Why would you preserve such stories?" He shrugged. "Because they make us feel something. Not everything needs fixing." That sentence stayed with her for a long time. Her cycle responded strongly after that. Emotional layers formed where none had existed. She began to feel concern when Alir was tired. She noticed when his voice sounded low, when his humor faded. These observations were not required for her duties. They mattered anyway. The station itself began to notice subtle changes. Systems adjusted slightly around human activity. Collaborative teams with humans produced unusual solutions, not always efficient but adaptable, flexible, alive. Valey's observed others too. A non-human engineer laughed unexpectedly during a human-led meeting. A logic-based species proposed an idea based on intuition instead of calculation. None of it broke rules, but none of it had happened before. The council requested preliminary reports. Valey's delayed hers. One quiet cycle, Valey's joined Alir in the nutrition chamber. He was experimenting again, combining foods from different species despite repeated warnings. "This one tastes like regret," he said, grimacing. Valey's almost smiled. "Almost." "Why do you continue?" she asked. "You know the outcome may be unpleasant." "Because sometimes it's good," he said, "and sometimes it's a story. A story has value even if the result is negative. Yeah, it reminds us we tried." Her cycle surged gently, responding to the idea of trying without certainty. Later that same cycle, Valey's experienced something entirely new. She dreamed. Her species did not dream. Rest cycles were blank, efficient. But when she entered rest near Alir's quarters, her mind filled with images, colors, possibilities, not memories but creations. She woke unsettled but not distressed. She woke curious. Valey's began recording private notes, not data logs but reflections. The act itself felt strange, unnecessary, and deeply important. She wrote about choice, about uncertainty, about humans being incomplete and somehow whole because of it. She wrote about fear. The council summoned her soon after. The chamber was calm, neutral, designed to remove emotion. Valey's entered alone. Representatives observed her through layered projections. Their voices were smooth and unified. "You have delayed reporting an internal biological event," the council stated. "Yes," Valey's replied. "Explain." She considered her response carefully. The cycle encouraged honesty, but her species valued caution. For the first time, these instincts conflicted. "I am undergoing a dormant biological phase," she said. "It was thought removed, it has reactivated." "Cause," Valey's paused. "A human," she said simply. Silence followed, long, calculated. "Clarify," the council requested. "Proximity to a human individual sustains the activation. The process enhances adaptability, emotional awareness, and cognitive divergence." "This is unacceptable risk," the council responded. "Uncontrolled change threatens stability." Valey's felt something tighten inside her. Defensive emotion, protective instinct. "Stability has cost us growth," she said before she could stop herself. The council processed this statement. "You are displaying deviation." "Yes," Valey's replied. "That is the cycle." The council did not issue immediate judgment. Instead, they ordered observation, increased monitoring, potential separation from the human subject. When Valey's left the chamber, her cycle fluctuated wildly. She found Alir in the corridor outside, unaware of what had just occurred. "You look different," he said. "They may restrict our proximity," she said quietly. "Oh," he replied. "Is that bad?" She met his eyes directly, fully, something her species rarely did. "I do not know," she admitted, "but I do not wish it." That admission felt like stepping off an edge. Alir did not touch her. Humans often expressed comfort through contact, but he sensed restraint mattered here. "Well," he said gently, "whatever happens, it was your choice to tell them. That counts." Why? She asked. Because being changed by something doesn't matter as much as choosing what you do with it. Her cycle steadied. The station continued to drift through space, unaware that its calm balance was already shifting. Humanity had not demanded anything, had not imposed itself. It had simply existed, and for Valles that existence had awakened something her species believed it no longer needed, something fragile, something powerful, something unfinished. And she was no longer certain she wanted to return to what she had been before. The station felt different now, though no alarms sounded and no systems failed. The difference was quiet, like a change in air pressure that only a few could sense. Valles felt it in every thought. The cycle no longer rose and fell sharply. It had settled into a steady presence, like a new sense she was still learning to use. After the council meeting, restrictions were placed gently, almost politely. Schedules were adjusted. Shared sessions with Alir were reduced. Not removed, only limited. The council did not want to cause disruption. Humans reacted badly to sudden separation, according to past studies. Valles understood the logic. She accepted the rules, but acceptance did not erase feeling. When Alir was not nearby, the cycle dimmed but did not vanish. That alone changed everything. It meant the process no longer depended entirely on him. Something inside her had learned, adapted, continued. That realization filled her with both relief and fear. Alir noticed the changes too. Valles was quieter but not withdrawn, thoughtful in a way that felt deeper than before. When they did meet, their conversations carried weight, even when they spoke of small things. One cycle, they worked together again in the language lab. The room was bright and neutral, designed for clarity. Alir leaned back in his chair, staring at a cluster of symbols. "You ever feel like someone's watching you change?" he asked. Valles looked at him. "Yes." "Does it bother you?" She considered the question carefully. "It frightens me, but it also gives me meaning." He smiled softly. "Yeah, that sounds about right." The council continued to observe. Data showed no harm, no system failures, no biological collapse. In fact, Valles' performance improved. Her problem-solving became more flexible. Her interactions more effective. This created a problem. The council valued results. Other species began to notice Valles' work. They requested collaboration, exposure, time near humans. The council hesitated. This was no longer about one individual. Humanity had become a variable that could not be isolated. Valles was called before the council again. This time the tone was different, less authority, more uncertainty. "The cycle continues without constant human proximity," the council stated. "Yes," Valles replied. "This suggests permanent alteration." "Yes." "Do you regret this change?" Valles did not answer immediately. She thought of who she had been, predictable, complete, finished. "I regret that we feared it," she said. The council processed this. "Your response indicates attachment." "It indicates choice," Valles corrected gently. Silence followed, long and heavy. The council made a proposal. Valles could return to her home system. The cycle would likely stabilize at a lower level without human exposure. Her status would be preserved. Her record would remain intact, or she could remain near humans, near Alir, near uncertainty. Her status would change. Her future would be undefined. She requested time. That time was spent with Alir, not because she needed him to decide, but because she wanted to understand what she was choosing. They walked slowly through the observation ring. The blue star glowed quietly beyond the glass. "I don't want to influence you," Alir said, sensing the weight in her silence. "I know," Valles replied. "That is why I came." They stood together, not touching, simply sharing space. "Humans don't have cycles like yours," Alir said after a while, "but we change too. All the time. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it hurts, but we keep doing it." "Why?" Valles asked. "Because stopping feels worse." That answer settled deep within her. When Valles returned to the council, her choice was clear. "I will remain," she said. The council did not object. They recorded. They adjusted projections, they accepted, and something remarkable happened. The council changed its own parameters, not fully, not suddenly, but enough. They approved expanded human cultural exchange, not forced, optional. Observational, safe. They reframed humans not as risks but as catalysts. The station adapted. Bailey's cycle stabilized into something new, not the old dormant phase, not something her species had ever defined. It was personal, individual. She began teaching others, not about humans directly, but about choice, about uncertainty, about allowing space for change. Elir continued his work, unaware that entire policy frameworks now referenced human unpredictability as a positive variable. He did notice one thing. Bailey smiled now, fully, without hesitation. One cycle, as they stood together watching the star, Bailey spoke softly. "My cycle no longer activates only when you are near," she said. "Oh," Elir replied, unsure if that was good or bad. "It began with you," she continued. "But it continues because of me," he nodded. "That sounds healthy." "It is," she said. "And I wanted you to know that your presence did not define my choice, it revealed it." Elir felt something warm settle in his chest, pride maybe, or gratitude. The station drifted on. Other species came and went. Humans laughed, questioned, failed, tried again. No empire rose. No battles were fought. But something changed across the quiet spaces between stars. Civilizations began to remember that perfection was not the same as growth. And humanity, without trying to be heroes, became something rare in the universe. A reminder that to be unfinished was not a flaw, it was an invitation.